Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhattare Srimate Bhaktivinoda Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyanishtharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yagnika Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you all for coming on this very auspicious day. Honoring Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So I'd like to begin just by emphasizing a few points in his songs. Of all the songs of all the acharyas, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the most prolific writer. It would be hard to compare. Some people say he wrote 125 books, many of them novels, many of them spiritual novels. Many people write novels, but very few people write spiritual novels that contain the whole philosophy of the Gaudiya Vaishnava, like Jaiva Dharma. The Jaiva Dharma is a work beyond compare. Explaining the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and even many of the examples that Srila Prabhupada gives throughout his books are coming from Jaiva Dharma. Many, many examples. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and took as one of his main objectives two major things. One, to eradicate the sahajya, not only sahajya tendency, but sahajya prominence that existed from the time of Sri Narottam Das Thakur, who was really the last acharya in our line, who fully explained the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a scientific way. From his time up to the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Vaishnavism fell to such a low standard that even Bhaktivinoda Thakur was not attracted to be a Vaishnava. You can imagine, he's a Manjari, but he's not attracted to be a Vaishnava. That's how bad it was. Of course, sometimes, unfortunately, we have to correct this by our own actions and by following the creed of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the form of Shikshastikam. Sometimes we do the same thing. Sometimes arguing, fighting, becoming angry, holding grudges. These things, of course, they never happen in Trinidad, but they do happen. And then sometimes when these things happen, a devotee might think twice about inviting someone to the temple. They should come to the temple and feel transcendental atmosphere. Just like I'll give one example. It's a little off the, but just to give an example. One time, one temple president, and he wouldn't mind if I said his name, Chittagorananda Prabhu. And he had such difficulty with his first wife that in the middle of the Sunday feast, she pulled off his dhoti. And he was chanting the kirtan. And all of a sudden he was there and his skirt down, anyway, things like that don't attract the public. And so we have to see that all of our acharyas, they taught more from precept, although they spoke so much philosophy. But what endeared Srila Prabhupada to the initial devotees? It was his action, his humility. Prabhupada could have come, as one devotee said to me, if Prabhupada would have flown here first class ticket from India in the beginning, with beautiful silk robes and, big arrangement, huge, then he would have gotten a lot of people, but no one would have surrendered. Just like so many people came, Vivekananda came, Paramahansa Yogananda came. When Paramahansa Yogananda came, we had a big auditorium full of people all dressed in suits and ties. But how many of them became devotees? How many of them surrendered to Krishna? No. So we have to teach by precept, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur was famous for this. So the first thing he wanted to do, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself writes that I was very attracted to Jesus Christ because I saw him with raised arms. That's how, sometimes in India, if you ever study Christianity in India, they do artik. It's just like in any Vedic tribe, they do artik, and they don't have so many crucifixes, and it's a little different. And when they're singing, they'll raise their arms, and it's just like you would think, if you didn't know it was a Christian church, you would think it was a temple, Vaishnava temple. So he was very attracted. And then he said later on, I was very attracted to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he reminded me of Jesus Christ. So imagine how bad the Vaishnava situation was. That Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he first of all, he was born in a Shakta family, worshippers of Durga. And so he said almost all the time in his youth, he would be, see big feasts of buffaloes cooking and all kinds of things that, and he said that no one would speak about Krishna. He said by good fortune, which was actually Krishna's arrangement, because he was a pure devotee. He said the doorkeeper would speak to me every day about Ramachandra and Krishna. He would speak, he would recite Mahabharata and Ramayana. So that way he heard about Krishna from his youth, but not from his family, just from the doorkeeper. And so he had a very difficult time. And he said when he saw the Vaishnavas rolling on the ground and crying in chilly ecstasy. Just one time I remember when I was in Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada came into the temple, and there was one sadhya who came in and he was going like this, and he fell on the ground, started rolling around. And the devotees were, very new, like offering obeisances. And Prabhupada just looked like this, looked at Ramananda with his cane, went like this. And Ramananda just went over, and when he got close to him, he looked at Ramananda, got up, took off. So that was Srila Prabhupada's sentimentality as far as sadhya. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was faced with a world of sadhya, the 13 principal Siddhanta Appasampradaya groups. Some of them proclaiming to be Mahaprabhu, some of them proclaiming to be this. And he had to deal with all that. And so he started writing, many of his first writings dealt with defining and systematically, which Jiva Goswami had already done. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur studied very, very deeply Jiva Goswami, who categorically and scientifically established Krishna consciousness. And he did the same thing, but he did it in a very unique way, which was his second objective. That objective was to present Krishna consciousness so that those that held the traditional view, or those that held the Western view, he wrote for both audiences. Just like he says in the beginning of his Krishna Samhita, that personally I believe in the Vedic tradition, but in order that everyone can approach Krishna consciousness, we didn't use the word Krishna consciousness, everyone can approach Krishna. I have placed these principles in dates and times in a manner suitable for the Western audience. Otherwise, he in Krishna Samhita and also in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was like her precepts. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the Bhagavatam was written maybe 700-800 years ago. He said many things, changed the dates. Why? Because he wanted the Western people who would never accept, especially the Westerners who were occupying and dominating India, they're not going to accept that, Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago and that all these demons were running around killing, He presented just a philosophy of Krishna consciousness. He put in the dates that would be acceptable for them. And everyone was impressed. Everyone was very impressed. Many of us, most of us, have heard the story of Vishikena. When Vishikena, who was claimed himself to be an incarnation of Vishnu, was creating havoc. He was demanding of the village people that they bring their wives and daughters for Ras Lila. And they did it because they were afraid of him. He said, otherwise you may burn. And he demonstrated his mystic power. He had mystic power. So the British government didn't know what to do. And so they called Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur went there with the police force. And when the policemen saw Vishikena, they did some mystical thing. They all ran away. And it was just Bhaktivinoda Thakur left. And he said, and he could see Bhaktivinoda Thakur was more powerful than him. He could understand who he was. And therefore he said, oh, Bhaktivinoda, I see you have come. If you want, you can sit by my side, thinking that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, everybody else in India at that time and any time, you pay enough, and if they're not pure Vaishnavas or some very moral person, well, go ahead. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur just said, no, you have to go to jail. What you're doing is illegal. It's immoral. Took him to jail. And he cursed Bhaktivinoda Thakur's family. At first he was trying to please him, then he warned him that you will suffer and your family will suffer. And then immediately he cursed the family. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur's daughter became very sick. And the wife became sick, but the daughter was practically dying. And even Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a fever. And so his wife said, just let it go. Our daughter is suffering. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, if our daughter has to die, then that is the will of Krishna. But this rascal will not. Has to stand trial. So he was waiting in jail for trial. And finally, one very diligent jail officer, hearing from Bhaktivinoda Thakur that all of his power was coming from his hair, he cut off his hair. And then he lost all of his mystic powers. This is why yogis would have long hair. This even happened in the Bible, Christian Bible. Samson, his hair got cut off and he couldn't do anything. He used to win. Until he prayed to God and got strength back. So this is, what gives us his power. For a devotee, as we just sang, what is the power? Where is the power? The power is with the Vaishnava Thakur. He says in the song, Krishna se tomara, Krishna ditipad, tomara shakti achi. That Krishna is yours. You have the power to give Krishna to me. So this is the Vaishnava's power. Therefore, a Vaishnava is not interested in mystical power. Because a Vaishnava simply wants to please Krishna. And a Vaishnava, as we chant every day, hopefully, Amanina, he doesn't want any recognition. He doesn't want any powers. If we had powers, then every time we became angry, we would probably kill someone. Or at least make them sick or do something to them. Like sometimes we even think in our mind that we have some problem with someone. I hope that Krishna takes care of them and punishes them duly for offending me. And so this goes exactly with our Vaishnava principle. So it's very difficult to be a pure devotee. Bhaktivinoda Thakur stood up to this man and he was finished. So he was so powerful. He was respected. All the British, there were a few people in the British government that were envious of him because he was so efficient. Even they couldn't believe his, he explained his own daily schedule, and it was also recorded by Prasad, his son, that he would take rest between 7:30 and 8 in the evening, and get up before 10. That means 2 hours. 2 hours rest. And why did he take 2 hours rest? Because that's what the Goswamis did. Therefore, sometimes he's called the seventh Goswami. And he, we could understand Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Goswami. There was, they were Babajis, sannyasis, Goswami. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had 10 children, and he was working. Every day he went to work. And not only did he go to work, he would do 30 to 50 cases a day. Even in modern court systems, generally they can do maybe 3, 4, 5 cases a day. And he would do all these, and he would write the judgment himself. He would do the case in 5 minutes, write the judgment in 2 minutes, finish. He was so strict, and he was so much into the absolute truth. At that time, the king of Puri, King of Puri had a lot of power in those days, a lot more than they do nowadays. So the king of Puri was skimming off funds from the Jagannath collection, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur discovered this. He sanctioned the king, and that's not a very popular thing to do. He sanctioned the king. So the king, of course, up front, king said, "Thank you very much." He went to a tantra specialist, a tantra sadhu, and he said, "I want you to do a curse so that this Bhaktivinoda will leave or die." And so he did it. But instead of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his son died. And so immediately he came and surrendered the funds. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur wasn't afraid of anyone as a devotee. A devotee Bita Raghavaya, or a devotee is beyond all attachment, fear, and anger. Of course, a devotee may become angry, but he doesn't become angry at someone from his own feelings. He becomes angry on behalf of Krishna. Just like a father becomes angry at the son, but out of love. And out of that love, he punishes the son, so that the son will be better. So the only reason that a Vaishnava becomes angry is to correct. Or if someone is blaspheming a Vaishnava or blaspheming the Lord, then a Vaishnava becomes very angry. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he would take 2 hours a day. He would get up before 10 o'clock, and he would, at that time, he would translate. He would translate, he would study, and until 4:30 in the morning, until 4 o'clock to 4:30, he would take a half-hour rest. 4:30, he would wash himself, and he would chant japa until 7, although sometimes he would chant japa all night long, and if he wasn't translating or writing. And then at 7:30 or 7 o'clock, I don't remember, 7 o'clock, he would again take like a 15-minute rest, and then he would receive visitors, he would do correspondence, and then if there were no visitors, he would read some more. He would read for an hour, then he would read some more, and then he would walk on his veranda and make philosophical arguments against himself and answer them. And he would use those in writing all of his different books. Then he would take his bath and take his breakfast, which generally was 2 chapatis and half a liter of milk. And then he would, at 8:55 in the morning, 9:55. So he would go to the court from 10 to 1, try all of his cases, go home from 1 to 2, and take a little bit of rest. Sometimes he would take a little prasadam, one little sabji, sometimes he would not eat, and he would chant. Then from 2 to 5, we would be in the court again. And then upon returning home, he would translate and write until 7:30. Sometimes he'd take care of some family matters. So sometimes our devotees become overwhelmed by family responsibilities. But here we have the example, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Of course, if we only had that example, then most of us would think, well, forget this, I can't do this. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada, he came as a grihastha. And Prabhupada was much more in the mood of what would be similar, or his situation was much more similar to the situation that grihasthas will find themselves nowadays. And Prabhupada gives the perfect example. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he, many of his writings he did before he was initiated. Krishna Samhita, so many things he wrote. Initiation for him, as it was for Srila Prabhupada, was really essentially a formality in the sense that they were already topmost pure devotees, topmost Mahabhagavad. But still they had to give this example, and still they gave the example, as we just sang, that Gurudev Kripa Sindhu, that you are an ocean of mercy. You are, or as we sang Acharya Thakur, that Vaishnava Thakur. You are the most munificent personality. Thakur actually really means deity or worshipful person. So this title of Thakur is not something very cheap, something that is given to the topmost devotees of the world. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his youth, he had many difficulties. He had many difficulties with health also. And he had to go through so many difficult times. At one time, there was a plague, of cholera, which swept through his village, swept through so many places, practically speaking, wiped out his family. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had one uncle, was it uncle? His grandfather here. But anyway, he was very much a mystic. So he called Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he actually gave him the mission. He gave him the mission of bringing Krishna consciousness to everyone. He said, "You will be a great personality." And then he said, "In a few hours I'll leave this world," and he did. And so he was just waiting for Bhaktivinoda Thakur to go. And he left him an ashram. He left him some property. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that after that, he decided that his only duty in life was spiritual life. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his first job, he was a teacher. First thing he did in his life, his work as a grihastha, was a teacher. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur got married, of course, as was the tradition, at a very early age. But after his first child, his wife died. He had like a small 2-month-old baby, and he's working as a teacher. So he consulted with other Vaishnavas. And for him it was such a big decision, such a dilemma to marry again, but with the consent of the Vaishnavas, which is something we should all learn. We should do everything with the consent of superior Vaishnavas. Then we're secure. Not with our mind or our intellect. We try to govern our lives. First we take instruction, And then we use our Srila Prabhupada said one time, first you use your intelligence to decide to whom I surrender. And after you surrender, you use your intelligence, how will I surrender? Once you have the whom, then you hear from them their instructions, and based on those instructions, you use your intelligence how to apply them in here. And not that we keep challenging or keep questioning. This is our atheistic tendency. We're always, everything is there. Everything is there in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. More, not only everything, but more than everything. Meaning that not only everything we need to live our lives, but everything we need to go back home, back to God. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his youth, and then he teaching. I remember when I was on Padayatra, we went to the school where he originally taught, and they have a little deity of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in that school. And so after some time, he took up government service, and he was married, he had more children, and after he took up his government service for some time, he requested that he could be transferred to Jagannath Puri. And when he was transferred to Jagannath Puri, then he began to really do prolific writing, prolific study of the Shastras. Being with Lord Jagannath, he was very happy. Very, very happy. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his coming, his so-called coming, he was already there, but his awakening, so to speak, to Gaudiya Vaishnavism is when he began to hear about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then he heard about Chaitanya Charitamrita. Imagine, that wasn't even common knowledge. That's how degraded Vaishnava the society had become. That there was no Chaitanya. He was looking and looking for Chaitanya Charitamrita. Couldn't find him. Finally, he found the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he said, I read Chaitanya Charitamrita 3 times. Now this is something that's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, the Lord Brahma. He reviewed the Vedas 3 times. The first time he came to the conclusion of Sambandha, the second time Abhideya, and the third time Prayojana. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur said the same thing. The first time I read it, after reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, I was situated in Bhava Bhakti. Imagine. He read Chaitanya, he was situated in Bhava Bhakti. The second time I read it, I was on the platform of Shuddha Bhakti. And the third time I read it, I could understand the highest purpose of life and how to achieve it. And so, by reading Chaitanya Charitamrita 3 times, he was totally transformed. Of course, that's because he was already there. Krishna was restoring his normal consciousness. Sometimes Yoga Maya, our great acharyas, they may be influenced by Yoga Maya to act in a certain way so that they can give certain examples and then they can show us how to come to pure bhakti. So Yoga Maya is always acting in the lives of pure devotees. So then, after Jagannath Puri, Bhaktivinoda Thakur managed to after reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he wanted to be in the land of Mahaprabhu. So he finally got transferred to Navadvip. And when he was there, then he began really studying Gaudiya Vaishnava, the Gaudiya Vaishnava, the history of Navadvip. And then he began to see that different people had different opinions of where is Mayapur, where is Navadvip, where everything was. It wasn't clear. So he began studying old manuscripts and maps and everything. And finally, he figured out from where he was, situated in his ashram on Jalangi. Of course, in that time, he had already begun lecturing, and Gorkishore Babaji would regularly come to his lectures, to the point where he built a little bhajan kutir for him, and sometimes he would stay there. You know. He would never, Jagannath Babaji would never, Gorkishore Babaji would never stay in the same place for more than 2 days or 3 days. But he would come, and he would come and listen to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's lectures. He loved Bhaktivinoda Thakur's lectures because he didn't give so many lectures. He was more in the mood of a Babaji, Jagannath. Of course, he would preach to people. But generally speaking, Gorkishore Babaji was so disgusted with the mentality of people that he as Prabhupada said one time, his mood was, they want to go to hell, let them go. Otherwise, he was in the mood of Mahabharata. The Mahabharata's mood is, everything is perfectly arranged by Krishna. So these people want to go to hell, all right. But what he was really, his real mood was protecting the sanctity of the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, not allowing it to be degraded as it had been for someone. So he was doing his part, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he did it by challenging all these rascals, but he could only deal with a few people at a time. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur saw the efforts of Gorkishore Babaji, but he did it through the pen. As I said, the pen is mightier than the sword. You know? So the sword of Gorkishore Babaji's tongue was not as sharp. It was sharp, but it wasn't as powerful as Bhaktivinoda Thakur's pen. And you can just imagine what it means to write 125 books by hand. You know, nowadays we have dictaphone and people, generally speaking, even in our movement, nowadays people write books by giving lectures. They have somebody edit the lectures, put it all together, and there's a book. That's more common nowadays, not only with devotees, but so many people. But he wrote everything by hand. You know. He wrote in English, he wrote in Bengali, he wrote in Sanskrit. Some things he would write in Hindi, not very many. Few things he wrote. You know. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, through his songs, he established, he took the position of every particular, if you read all of his songs, which is not easy, but if you read everything, you'll see this constructing the path of devotion through his song. Just like his songs on Sharanagati, he defines each one of the steps of surrendering to Krishna. In some of them 5 songs, some of them 8 songs, some of them 12 songs. So many beautiful songs. And all bringing us systematically to the path of pure devotion. Srila Prabhupada, in 1968, he gave a lecture. I was going to read that lecture, but I couldn't find it right away. So it was a short lecture, and where Prabhupada said that the works of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur are the most important literary works of our time. And Prabhupada said, the books of Srila Bhaktivinoda, we should all read all the books of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He said, I am including those books in my books, and also we will translate all of his books and make them available. Of course, later on, when Prabhupada saw that many of his disciples were becoming bewildered even by reading Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, not because there's anything wrong there, but because the way they were being explained to the devotees, because where did they get the books? They got it in Chaitanya Math. And when they went to Chaitanya Math, they got a different perspective. And so Prabhupada, at that point, he told the devotees, better just to read my books. But Srila Prabhupada was always very happy when some Vaishnava literature was translated. And of course we read in Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says, for more information, read such and such literature. For more about this, read such and such. Except for Govinda Lilamrita and Gita Govinda, he doesn't say read those. It's just everything. Read this, read that. If you want more information, read Bhagavatam. So, because Prabhupada said that, we have the obligation to translate those books in a systematic and proper way, so that devotees can understand. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he at one point he was commissioned to come and speak, because at that time not only were there the Sahajas, there were also the caste Swami, and there were the Smarta Brahmins, all these different groups, and the Appa Sampradayas. Imagine just a whole kitchery of different philosophies, deviant philosophy. And so he had to deal with all these things. So the Smarta Brahmins, they were saying that because Bhaktivinoda Thakur was not born in a Brahmin family, and because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who had already become famous for his preaching, was not born in a Brahmin family, because Sri Narottam Das Thakur was not born in a Brahmin family. They were saying that all these lines they're not bona fide, they're not authorized, because only a Brahmin can become a guru, and only someone born in a Brahmin family can be a Brahmin. So he was requested to come and speak to these people. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so absorbed in his, at that time, in his Namahatta and preaching, that he was a little indisposed health-wise. So he told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to go and do that. And when they heard that Bhaktisiddhanta, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, even though the Avalas and Bhavalas, he criticized them, but he would sometimes associate with them. Meaning, like that, he would be respectful to them. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wasn't at all. When Bhaktisiddhanta was a little boy, Radhacharan Das Babaji came to the house of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was one of the Babajis that wasn't so, bona fide and so strict. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he treated him very nicely. But when Bhaktisiddhanta was a little boy, he came out and he started chastising him, and showing how his philosophy was off. And then he just walked out of the room. So the Babaji said that, how he addressed Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said, why is he like this? And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, he's a little fanatic. But he was actually, afterwards he told him he was very proud of him. He was very happy that he said that and he did that. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, why did he do that? Because he was thinking that the followers of these people, if they heard from pure devotees, so he tried to have some kind of a friendly relationship, so they would come and hear from him, or hear from his disciples, or hear from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and become purified. Just like when I used to do Sankirtan, I would always distribute books in different yoga societies, and especially Bhagavad Gita. And I would give a lecture, and everybody, my lecture wouldn't change them one bit. Generally speaking, maybe one or two people would find some wisdom there. But by giving the Bhagavad Gitas, I gave Bhagavad Gitas, I tried to speak in such a way that wouldn't offend. It was sometimes very difficult, but I would try to do that to my best ability. And all these people came to Krishna consciousness. Someday I'll tell the story of how a whole yoga group came to our temple. They abandoned it. It was like 60 people. After I had an encounter with their teacher, they all came to the temple. Because a big migration, that's a long story. But, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wanted people, this is the compassion, this is what makes someone an acharya. They adjust things so that the maximum amount of people can get the maximum exposure to Krishna consciousness. They're not, although Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very heavy with Mayavadis and Sahajis, very heavy, but he would be very, very gentle with the devotees. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he wasn't very inclined to preach to the public. He was more inclined to preach to intellectuals because of his unbelievable intellectual ability. But whenever there was a feast, he would serve all of the guests. He would personally, from his hand, serve everyone. He wouldn't even, he might eat something at the end, but he would personally serve them. So, this is the Acharya. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his idea was, let them all become, he would, something that even Prabhupada would not do. He allowed professional kirtan leaders from the Navadvip area to come and chant. And even one devotee questioned Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, how could he come and allow these lila kirtans, called lila kirtan? And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, he never allowed them to speak about Madhurya Lila. He always, no Madhurya Lila, but only no Shringara Lila, only Krishna's childhood pastimes in Gauranga Lila. He would allow them to chant. He said, because this attracts the people. And somehow or another, they're getting the holy name. Somehow or another, they're getting exposure. Somehow or another, they're coming in contact with the deity. People who would not do that. So this is the ability of the Acharya, that he devised so many different ways. And then, of course, his main concern after he came to Navadvip and began to profusely study and examine all the different Gaudiya Vaishnava literatures, then he came upon all the information about Nityananda Prabhu and his Namahatma. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, immediately, he began the Namahatma program. And organizing Namahatmas and, designating different devotees to become, he takes charge of Namahatta groups. And he established so many Namahattas, but his Namahattas were very special. And therefore, in his songs, he says that, what is the price? What is the price to join the Namahatta? It has a price. Full faith. You have to have full faith. And that is the money, that's the currency that's used, faith and bhakti. And so he was very, very careful that the Namahattas were conducted in pure devotion, very pure singing. He wouldn't allow the professional singers to come to the Namahatta, but he allowed them to do public programs. Even Prabhupada allowed that one time, 1977. He allowed a kirtan competition. But then after some time, some of the more exotic groups came, and he started, with a very typical, it would take them 3 minutes to get one Krishna. And so, Srila Prabhupada said, stop it. And so Jeff Thakur, he was the one who organized it. He invited all these people, and Prabhupada told him to stop it. So he had to go out there, and stop these people. Of course, he did it as Prabhupada instructed one time in Bombay. They had a program, Bandal program, and they had all these Mayavadis. And so one Mayavadi spoke, two Mayavadis spoke, the third one spoke, Prabhupada told Brahmananda to stop it. And so Brahmananda didn't know what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to grab him and take him off the stage? Because he was used to doing things like that. So, so he looked at Prabhupada bewildered, and Prabhupada said, stop him. And he was like, looking at the devotee. Prabhupada realized, he said, kirtan. kirtan. So actually that's what Thakur just got our devotees to go start a kirtan, and normal kirtan, well, semi. And so, and these other religions, they got a little, probably wasn't the best public relations move, but many of the prophets said it, so do it. Prabhupada wasn't interested in public relations. Prabhupada was interested in Shuddhava. No. This is a pure devotee. Of course, Prabhupada is also interested in, good publicity and everything. But then Prabhupada used to say, any publicity is good publicity as long as it has the name Krishna. So these are acharyas, they give us a very special perspective. So, just one part, especially one part of the song, that we just chanted, has very deep petition, some very, very important instruction. Here, what do we get from the Vaishnava Thakur? Chaya Vega Doni. That please allow me, my dear Lord, to overcome the 6 urges. What are those 6 urges? Who knows?
Mind, tongue, speech, anger, belly, stomach, and genitals.
Well, I couldn't quite hear.
6 forces, which is the mind, the tongue,
Yeah.
anger,
Yeah. Good.
genitals, and the
Vacho
stomach.
Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Uda Rasa Vegam. So these are the Chaya Vega. So allow me to dominate. You can see where the Latin word dominus or dominate comes from. Bengali, Sanskrit, domi. All these words are all the original. If we study the Sanskrit Bengali language, then we can see so many words. Chaya dosha shodhi. Correct the 6 faults. What are the 6 faults? Somebody else. Atyavara prayasascha. So these are the 6 things that give up overeating, over-collecting, give up prajalpa and niyamagraha, give up prajalpa, give up following rules without understanding what they're for, or avoiding rules because they're inconvenient. Give up these things. Give up the association of worldly persons, and give up greed. So these are the 6 doshas. Chaya guna degunasi. So somebody else, what are these 6 gunas or qualities that a Vaishnava should have? And we take that from Sri Guru and Guru. Anyone know? Next verse. Enthusiasm, faith, and patience, and then strictly following the path of devotion, following in the footsteps of the acharyas, and avoiding the association of worldly people. And the last 6, Chaya Satsanga. This is the next verse in Nectar of Instruction. Who knows that? We should all know that. Anyway, so that is we reveal our mind, we speak Krishna consciousness, we dadati Bhaktivinoda, we give charity, we accept charity, we reveal our mind to not everybody, but at least someone who can help us understand how to conquer the mind, and we accept that revelation from others to purify our mind. And then the most famous one and easiest one, Mukte Mukte Chaiva. take prasadam, accept prasadam and give prasadam. It's easier to accept it than to give it, but that's not so difficult. Unless you're a bad cook. Maybe more difficult. Let's just second time around. So many wonderful instructions here in this, and every song, Srila Thakur. Of course, every day we sing. What do we sing before? Bhagavatam class. Jaya Radha Radha Bhaktivinoda. We sing Bhaktivinoda Thakur all day long. Beautiful song. Word art every day. So he has established, he has established the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta in such a beautiful way. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, toward the end of his life, of course, there's so many other things we can say, but we have limited time. Toward the end of his life, he wanted to retire. He wanted to go into samadhi, and he did. But then so many people came, were standing out of his in front of his Vajra Kutir, big lines of people. So he came out of samadhi and continued to preach to the people for some time. This is the mercy of a Vaishnava. Vaishnava is always more concerned of the benefit of others. As Raghunath Swami says, that a Vaishnava is Paradukha. His only sadness is to see the sadness of others, and therefore he is an ocean of transcendental bliss. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was always concerned, and of course, just to mention very quickly, two of the things that were the greatest things that he did. Everything he did was great. So he was looking through these maps and manuscripts, and he finally pinpointed what he thought would be the Yoga pit where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. But being a Vaishnava, he figured it all out and calculated. But a Vaishnava never relies on their own calculation. A Vaishnava relies on the mercy of other Vaishnavas. So he took Jagannath Babaji, who was his Shiksha Guru, his main guru, took him on his, he had a servant, and he carried him in a basket. Because he was so old, calculating he was about 130 years old. His body was so old that his eyelids, he couldn't even open his eyes because, as you get older, the flesh starts to kind of sag. So he couldn't open his eyes. You'd have to lift them up, And, but so he was there, just, 130, you can't do a whole lot. So he was just chanting. But when they got to that point, of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had come there previously, and he was pretty sure that was the place. Not only did his calculations work out, but that was pretty much it was a Muslim community at that time. So he came there, and he saw all these tulsi plants in the midst. Muslims generally don't grow tulsi. All these tulsi plants right in this area, and then the Muslim people in the area said, "Oh, don't go there. There's ghosts. Every night we see these ghosts. They're singing there." So when he heard that, he was convinced. So he brought Jagannath Babaji, and as soon as they walked over that spot where all the tulsi were, Jagannath Babaji jumped up in ecstasy and began to chant in ecstasy. Gauranga, Gauranga. So that's how he confirmed. That's how we as devotees confirm everything. We use our intelligence to understand things, but we confirm things. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj, he confirmed with the Vaishnavas before. It was suggested that he write this work because I'm an old man full of so many mistakes. But he was allowed to he was given the blessing to all the Vaishnavas, please do this, you are the most qualified. But he wouldn't do it. Baladevi Bhushan, before he was commended to do the explanation of Vedanta Sutra, to do a Bhasya. And so first he went to Govindaji, the deity of Govinda, and he asked his blessing and permission. And Govinda revealed to him that he revealed the whole thing to him. And then he asked the Vaishnava. So this is, although these Vaishnavas were so qualified, they still took permission of other Vaishnavas. And we're so unqualified, and sometimes we feel so intelligent. You think I know it all. I've been a devotee for 20 years, or 30 years, 10 years, or whatever it is, we already think we're already there. Whether it's 10 years, 20 years, what to speak when you get to 40, 50 years. You're almost in another tattva. I gave up the Jiva Tattva platform. So this is our false ego. But in spite of all this great intelligence and ability, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so humble. He was so humble. And so this was one of his great accomplishments, that he revealed the yoga things. And when he began and then he personally went to Calcutta, door to door, to collect. And we personally went door to door to collect for building a temple. And his effort was so admired that all the newspapers report, they started coming and they were advertising, please help the Thakur. Otherwise Krishna arranged. So sometimes when there's some difficulty in spiritual life, we should double our efforts. And then Krishna will help us. Not that we give up or we think this is too difficult. As Srila Prabhupada said, impossible is a word in the Fool's Dictionary. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, so many wonderful things, and he reestablished Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And of course, another thing he did, he was very desirous that Krishna consciousness would go to the West. So he prayed for a son who could take over his mission. And of course, that son was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, whom was so perfect that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who lived on the path of Lord Jagannath's path to Uddicha. During the Rath Yatra, the Rath cart stopped in front of his house for 3 days, which of course is a tribute to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who received the garland of Jagannath, but also a tribute to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. How many times does Lord Jagannath's cart stop in front of someone's house for 3 days? That's like unheard of. Sometimes the cart stops for like an hour, 2 hours. Sometimes the Pandits, they stop the cart. When the cart didn't stop by Krishna, they stop it because they are enacting the pastime of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they'll stop the cart, and sometimes they dress up one devotee as Mahaprabhu, and he goes behind the cart, and then he puts his head on the cart, and the cart stops. But this time, there was no plan. It was Krishna. Here is my pure devotee. Here are my pure devotees. Here is the topmost pure devotee, and here is the next topmost pure devotee. So it's amazing how Lord Jagannath, how important Jagannath is and how important his Rath Yatra is, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur took his main inspiration, well, from Mahaprabhu, but from Jagannath. And all of his big preaching began through Jagannath. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was blessed by Lord Jagannath, and he spent his last days in Jagannath Puri. And Srila Prabhupada, by the blessings of Jagannath, his first devotional service was to do Rath Yatra. And he organized Rath Yatra. So Krishna Jagannath arranged from childhood that he would learn, because he would ask his father, and he learned how to do it perfectly. He knew how to do it. And so Lord Jagannath can give he's so merciful, he can give so many blessings. He gives blessings to the poorest, and to the most unfortunate, and we give blessings to his pure devotees. So, these are some thoughts on Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I'll stop here. Any comment or question?
There's a quote that is in English, it's also in Sanskrit. When I get back to people who could read, very much humble, but not going to deep in. It is mentioned that two reasons is who tell that Vaishnavas die. Vaishnavas die to live. Unlimited spread the holy name of the room.
Actually, it's a little different from that.
Yes, ma'am.
The words are one word is different. We always say it like that, and Prabhupada said it like that. But the original, I'm trying to remember what the difference is. I believe it's not, he didn't say the holy name. He said something else. Spread something. No, not the holy name, something else. The original. And that's how we kind of embellished it with the holy name. There was something else that he said, the original. As far as I remember, there's something different from the way we always state that. That this is pointed out to me by one devotee who looked from the original Bengali. You got it?
That's right. He reasons ill for those that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still in song. The Vaishnavas died to live, and living tried to spread the holy name around.
No, there's something different. Anyway, I'll find that someday. That's what we say, but it's a little different. Okay. But that's a very good point. You said that. So, of course, we're talking about pure Vaishnava. But any Vaishnava who's following a pure Vaishnava should live that way. And of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is instructing us that we should leave a legacy. Maybe a little legacy, maybe a big legacy, but we should all leave some kind of legacy. Meaning that we should all teach Krishna consciousness to our ability. That we should, to the ability, to our ability, we should preach Krishna consciousness to whatever ability we have. So anyway, it's a little late. We'll stop here. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. And let us beg from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur his blessings that we can continue the mission that he reignited, the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, Sri Panchatattva, and the 6 Goswamis of giving Krishna consciousness to the world. And as Srila Prabhupada said, that even if everybody has books, then we will go to another planet and do Sankirtan. One devotee said, what happens if everybody has a book? Then we'll go to another planet. No problem. Everybody has a book, no problem. So this is the spirit of spreading the holy name. So thank you all very much for your attention. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Dr. Prabhu Mohan ki Jai, Jai Gorkanandi.